Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, my guest today is David Chase. David is an illustrator and researcher with a deep curiosity about the UFO contact and abduction phenomena. And in particular, the question is, and what do aliens look like? Can we please welcome David to the show? Hello there.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. It's good to be on.
Thank you. Can you walk us through what happened to you in 2015 when you encountered the so called invisible aid?
That was quite a day. There was a UFO conference called Experiencers Speak, and they met for several years, and it was in the state of Maine, in Portland, Maine, and in 2015. So most of the time after the conference, some of the attendees and speakers would go meet at this lake house and spend like a week camping there.
Yeah.
Just kind of camping, either lying on the floor of the house and on like air mattresses, or in tents in the backyard, wherever they could fit us all. And a lot of the people who were there were, of course, UFO abductees or experiencers. And so it created kind of an interesting energy that we figured maybe attracted things. But when I was there in 2015, it was probably, we'd been there about a week. So most of the attendees who had come to the camp had left by that point. But it was, I believe it was Thursday, and I know it was September 3rd, 2015. And there was what was it, about 1:30 p.m. I believe it was. There was a tree. So the lake house is next. It's like a little ways above the lake. It's a huge lake, and it's actually pretty nice for swimming during the summer. And just next to the house, there's this gully, and in the gully, there's a lot of trees. And about 1:30 p.m., I think I was working inside, maybe working on a drawing of an alien with one of the people there, and we were called out to the back porch by Audrey, who Audrey and Debbie are the twin sister experiencers who were kind of running the thing, and Audrey was kind of usually took the lead. But Audrey called us all out to the porch to look at something happening in the gully. And so we went out, and there was a tree falling, but the tree was coming down in stages. Like it wasn't just like falling, like it was more like there was something. It looked like some force was twisting it and shaking it and like pulling it down,
Right.
and like an invisible force. And it was really unusual. I mean, I'd never actually seen a tree fall before, so I don't have anything to compare it to other than what I've seen like on television, on videos and stuff. But it seemed unusual. So Audrey and Debbie and we sat at the rim of the gully, kind of watching. And after the tree came down, like a few minutes later, so then now the tree's lying pretty much horizontal across the gully, with the top of it was now like bushes because it's on the ground. And there was something moving in there, and we could see the branches sink down as if some weight landed on them, as if something jumped onto them, or the branches might spring back up. And that was unusual. And I was making jokes about The Predator, that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which was this invisible creature that climbed around in trees. But it was strange. It's because we could see the branches moving as if there was something jumping from place to place or shaking the branches, but we couldn't see any creature there. We went back into the house. This is probably around 2 p.m. now, and I stayed in there and was doing more talking to people and more drawing. And then around 4:20, well, around 4 p.m. or so, I heard Lee exclaim from the back, what was it? He said, I don't, bloody effing hell. He came running up out of the gully, and something down there had shocked him. And but Lee and Raquel had been sitting down there watching this something going on in there, and then around 4:20 I came out and I said, okay, I got to see what it is that Lee and Raquel are watching down there. So I went down cautiously to where they were sitting in front of the bushes, which was really the top of the tree. And I went, okay, so what is this? What are they looking at? And so then as I got right up to where they were, I slowed down and I looked and something shook the branches. And I said, okay, in my mind, I'm saying, that's an animal. I know an animal has done that. So they must just be watching a porcupine or a raccoon or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, just as I was having that thought, okay, so I'm not seeing a squirrel or a raccoon or anything like that. So maybe it's a smaller animal, like a small squirrel. Maybe it's a little bird, but it seemed like a bigger motion than that. And it's like, I'm looking, I'm not seeing an animal. And so now I have this paradox going on in my brain, because I know that this motion I just saw was caused by an animal. I also knew that if it was caused by an animal, I would be able to see the animal. And I also knew I could not see the animal. It was perfectly invisible. And I was looking, now I started thinking paranormal. I'm looking for, like in that movie, The Predator, he's wearing this cloaking device. So there's like a silhouette or a distortion of light where he is. So I'm looking for any kind of distortion. I didn't even see that. It was just whatever this was, it could move the branches. It had physical weight and strength. It moved like an ape or a primate, like a tree-dwelling primate. And it didn't produce any odor. It didn't produce any sound. But it was clear something physical, or that could interact physically with the branches and the leaves. So Lee and Raquel and I sat down there for Lee and Raquel had been there since like probably before 4:00, and I came down around 4:20 and sat with them until about 5. And Debbie came down like maybe 5 minutes after I got down there. So Lee and Raquel and I were kind of sitting in a row, and Debbie was sitting right behind us. And all four of us watched over the course of this 40-minute period as the branches would do these various kind of things. Is like you could see at least one or two large creatures, probably the size of a small gorilla or a large chimpanzee. And then there seemed to be a few of these smaller ones, maybe the size of monkeys, like a marmoset or a tamarin or something. And so our impression was maybe there's like a mama and some babies or something like that. But they were like watching us. This is the impression we had based on the movements we were seeing. But of course, we couldn't see anything physically with our eyes. We could just see the movement they were creating. And we were like feet from them, like just a couple of feet. At one point, I reached out my hand just to see if it would touch me. And it seemed like the movement kind of stopped at that point or slowed down. And it's like they didn't want to actually touch me, but I assume if they wanted to, they could have, and I would have maybe felt something. So the only way I can rationalize it is it was like something like an ape that was just outside of our dimension of reality. And that is the most, and I tried to explain it with, well, could it be that there's the tree is still coming down and there's tension in the branches and something snaps and the tension, the branches bounce up, and that's why it looks like the thing has leapt from one place to another. But clearly I could rule that out. Lee and Raquel and Debbie, we were all there. We all saw it, and we know, no, this is actually caused by an animal moving, and we should be able to see the animal, but it's perfectly invisible.
Could you hear any noises at all?
So the only sound was the sound. Even there wasn't. The wind was pretty still that day. It's like we're deep below the canopy, so there's not much motion there anyway. But there was no sound, just a little gentle breeze, and the sound the branches would make if when they would shake or spring up. But you would think if it was an actual primate that was there and fully materialized, that you would be able to smell an odor or hear
Yeah.
vocalizations or breathing. So yeah, I can say there was no sound of breathing, no vocalizations like primate sounds, and there was no odor because usually apes have a pretty strong odor to them, and there was none of that. So all I can say, it was like outside of our dimension, but it was there enough to have physical weight and physical strength, and it's something paranormal. That's all I can say.
I was going to say that. When did you realize that they were experienced what was just not a trick of the environment?
It basically, I mean, once I came down there, and went through this thing in my head where, okay, I'm seeing the movement, I know an animal caused it, I know I should be able to see the animal, and I can't see the animal. And at that point I realized it's got to be something paranormal, because there's no other way to explain this. And through the next several minutes, as I was watching this, as we were all watching it together, it's like I kept confirming that for myself. Yeah, the theory about the tension in the branches isn't working, because it's not like we're seeing the tree collapse further. It's more like just something's there that has weight, that's moving from place to place, and deliberately shaking the branches in some instances, or shaking the leaves, and in the case of some of the smaller ones that we were seeing. And we thought, like, is it related to Bigfoot? Because they say Bigfoot can be interdimensional, but to me, it seemed like it was smaller than Bigfoot, because they say Bigfoot's like 8 feet tall and walks like a man.
Yeah.
And this was more like a tree dwelling ape or primate of some kind. It was really, really unusual. I figured maybe it's a cousin of Bigfoot, or something like a related species or something. But all I can say for sure is what I experienced. But as to how to explain it, that's the thing. I'll just always call it the invisible apes experience, because that's the
Of course
best.
it does. Did you notice any changes around you? Any changes around the surroundings? And did you all talk later? And did you have you all the same opinion about what you think you saw?
Yeah, I mean, we discussed it for I mean, basically the next day, Lee and I both flew out on the plane. I guess Raquel too. So we all kind of left, and Debbie, she lived in that area, so she stayed there. But um, and there were, of course, other people who had observed this from the rim of the gully. Um, but we kept in touch over Facebook and the internet, through email and whatnot. And so we discussed it for months afterwards, and we kind of agreed, yeah, this is something that was like invisible apes, whatever it was. uh, but we could never explain it. I went down there the Friday, the next day, before leaving on the plane, to just take photos of the damage to the tree and whatnot, where it had knocked the tree over. And you could see how it had kind of split open the base of the tree there, pushing it down. And then went back, of course, the next year, the next year, 2016, was the last year we did the camp at the gully. And subsequently that house was sold, the lake house there. That was probably, I don't know, like around 2020 or something. They sold it, maybe a little before that. But for several years we were having these meetings at that house on the lake, and there had been sightings of craft as well. For instance, in 2016 we had like what we call a power up, which is where you look up and you see like a flash of light. And there had been a really bright one in 2014, so that clearly there was UFO activity in the area. And we think maybe what happened with the invisible apes is somehow related to the UFO activity, or maybe it's just that experiencers tend to attract weird paranormal things to themselves. So
I do. I've always said that. I think some of us have chosen to see things.
feels that way.
Did the incident change your perspective on cryptics or the unexplained phenomena?
It did not really change my perspective, except I went from being a researcher to an experiencer, in a sense, because I'd never apart from like what I call a sleep paralysis episode that I had when I was in college, where I saw like a shadow person, which I don't feel that was paranormal. I feel it was what they call like a hypnopompic dream or whatever. But that was kind of an unusual experience. But yeah, apart from that, I hadn't experienced anything you could really call paranormal until this event in the gully with the invisible apes. So I definitely, it's like going from being a researcher where I spent years talking to people about their experiences, like particularly with the different kinds of aliens. But, this is the first time I experienced directly something close at hand that was unexplainable.
Did you document the incident in any way? Notes, recordings, or physical evidence?
So we made I think Debbie had got a little short, maybe video on her cell phone or something, but it wouldn't have shown anything other than the plants moving, and I don't know if it's and it wouldn't have been adequate to really show what we were seeing. We made a deliberate thing when I was there. I didn't. One thing we didn't want is to scare it away, because we figured, if we start trying to take a bunch of photos of this and stuff, it's all going to stop. So we wanted to encourage it to keep moving the plants, and maybe see if we could deepen the communication somehow, if we could get like telepathic communication or something like that. The only thing like that is Debbie felt at one point like something touched her head, and she and Sandy, who was up at the rim of the gully, both like had impressions of what this was. Like Sandy had said, it seemed like there was like maybe a mother ape and then small children or something like that. But yeah, as far as documenting it, basically all I did is Debbie got a good photo of me and Lee and Raquel from behind, like just as we were sitting there, basically in lotus position, just kind of like interacting, taking in what was going on in front of us. And so that's kind of the best documentation I have, but there's nothing we have that's going to prove anything to anyone. So either you take our word for it or you don't.
How, when you're talking about that, how did you feel immediately after? Was you fear, or was it curiosity or disbelief?
There was not disbelief. I mean, other than the sense that stuff like this is usually only happens in dreams, and this was definitely waking reality, because when you're awake, there's your left brain is active. When you're dreaming, it's like that part shuts down and you're just taking in the experience. So no disbelief. I mean, maybe if I had been younger, and more rigid in my thinking, like right after I got out of college, it might have been harder for me to accept. But at that point, I'd heard so many paranormal experiences from people. It's like, okay, I'm actually experiencing it myself. There was just a feeling of maybe reverence, gratitude, thank you for giving us this experience. That was certainly my feeling, was gratitude to these creatures, and that like I'll respect the gully. I remember as I was walking up out of the gully, I was finding like some pieces of trash that we or the previous people who'd been on the property had left behind, and I was like a broken flower pot and things, and I was picking things up just like to kind of let them know that I respect their space, whatever these creatures are that are living in there or were at the time.
When you're talking about, did you share the story publicly right away, or did you hesitate?
There was no hesitation. I mean, this came right after the Experiencers Speak conference for that year. Was that like the third or fourth? I don't know. But yeah, I guess that was probably because 2014 was Experiencers Speak 3. That's when I did my presentation on my alien art. And then 2015, when we had the apes experience, I attended, but I didn't present anything. And then 2016, I did a little presentation about the Invisible Apes experience. So yeah. So what was the question again? I'm sorry.
On about sharing the story.
Oh yes, yes.
Publicly.
So yeah, about a week, about a month later, we went on probably Blog Talk Radio and did like Lee and Raquel and myself did like a interview with someone. I forget who it was. Might have been one of the attendees or one of the speakers at the conference who also had a show. But yeah, we've done, you know, a few interviews. I mean, afterwards, I don't know how much Lee and Raquel followed up with it, but like even years later, I would still do like YouTube interviews where I would discuss it and so forth.
Whereabouts were it? Did you say it was in Maine?
Yes, Maine, rural Maine. I mean, Maine is a state with a lot of trees and a lot of lakes. So it was up in, you know, the rural part of the state where there was just like a big lake with some nice little cabins and houses on it, and a good amount of undeveloped area where there were just plenty of trees and forest.
When you're talking about, what reaction did you receive from the cryptid community when you first told your story?
From which community?
The cryptid
Oh,
community.
you know, I don't know if I really talked to a lot of people who are involved in cryptozoology per se. I mean, peripherally, but most of my group was more like the UFO subculture, the contactees, the abductees, the experiencers, like the people who actually get taken on board the craft and interact with like small grays and reptilians and Nordics and all that stuff. So it would be interesting, like if I had crossed over with more like Bigfoot people and so forth, but you know, I don't really talk to a whole lot of them except to the degree that they interface with the alien abduction people.
Right. What would advice you would give to someone who believes they have encountered something similar?
Keep a journal. Keep a journal. Do something to document it. You know, I mean, it could be as simple as if it's similar to this, like Invisible Apes, just a photo of the site, and if the apes did something, like if they took down a tree or something like that, then take pictures of the damage they did to the tree, like I did in that case. But you know, it's good to have something like that to ground it for yourself. So because there's some people who have these paranormal experiences, and years later they end up questioning whether that actually happened or questioning their sanity. You know, so you want to document it, something, like some photos or a journal entry or something, so you have something to go back on and remind yourself, yeah, this is what I was actually experiencing at the time, and this is my photo of the site and so forth. Like,
oh, yeah,
just so it helps you keep things straight in your own head.
If you could relive that moment, what would you do differently?
That's a good question. Nothing. I'd again, I would hold off on the taking of photos. I mean, I took a couple photos at the time, but I did not direct the camera directly in front of us where the movement was happening. I like took photo of Lee, a photo of Raquel, you know, just to like document that we were experiencing it. But I did not want to like intimidate the beings or turn them off with the idea that like we're trying to get proof of your existence or something like that, because I feel like Bigfoot and these kind of cryptid creatures, like they probably, if they wanted us to have that proof, they would have presented themselves already. So you know, it's kind of like I don't know, when Travis Walton, if you're familiar with that story, he got out of the truck and he ran up to see the UFO because he assumed as soon as they arrived, it would just shoot off. Of course, it didn't, and that created his whole story, you know. But it's like I figured if they felt like we were trying to exploit the situation in some way or use it as a source of scientific proof of the paranormal, that they would just like stop. So yeah, I didn't mess with them then. And my intent, I mean, we wanted to get into the experience for ourselves and see what we could get out of it, if we could see more of them and deepen the level of communication. And we knew that they were something that physically they certainly had the strength to harm us if they wanted to, but we didn't sense that as an intent. Although we did sense that they didn't want us to get any closer to the top of the tree where they were, other than like maybe extending our hand as we did. But because, you know, when Raquel and Lee had come down there had been like a big crash, like this thing jumping down in front of them, and they could just sense like a giant ape jumps down in front of you. You know, it's like don't come any closer. You know, like you got to stay on your side of the line. You know, so there was that sense, but there was no the sense that if we respected them, they would respect us.
Do you think they're interdimensional then?
I have to conclude that if I assume that, I mean, that seems, you know, I believe in Occam's razor, and that's the idea. You take the most parsimonious explanation for something you observe, or the phenomenon that the explanation that involves the least a number of additional assumptions. And so what we observed looked like invisible apes slightly outside of our dimension. So yeah, I have to conclude that as, you know, at least a tentative explanation, that there's some kind of state of being where you can have a creature that's there, but it's like interdimensional. It can come in and out of our reality to varying degrees. Like obviously when people see a Bigfoot and it's leaving footprints and it's shaking branches and stuff, then that is fully here in our dimension, or so it would appear. And then, you know, when it's just like, when it's like our experience, there's no odor, there's no sound, there's no breath coming from it, but at the same time we can see its physical weight on the branches and that it can shake the branches. That's a little bit more outside of our reality, and of course it was perfectly invisible. And I've heard of other cases where people have encountered things where they do see like a silhouette or a distortion of the light, like heat waves or something like that, which is probably another, like an intermediate level of materialization. So yes, I'd say, you know, best guess interdimensional creature of some kind.
I'm going to say, you know, what's the single most important lesson you took away from the invisible ape incident?
That's a good one. I mean, for me, as a researcher who likes to understand things intellectually, it was the fact that, okay, perfectly invisible, no shadow, no silhouette, no light distortion. So that's a point, that's a detail that I can record. Then the fact that physical obviously had weight, because when it would jump from one spot in the branches to another, you could see the branch sink down. When it moved back, you could see the branches like spring up under the tension in the branches. So it had weight. You could see it where it shook the branches, physical strength. No sound, no breathing, no odor. So all of those are factual details, which for me are important lessons from the experience, which tell you something about the physical state of whatever these things are, whatever was happening. And the other thing was just gratitude, just this sense of thank you for allowing me to experience your presence, whatever you are, or thank you to the universe for showing me. I guess you could say that our science has missed something basic about the nature of physical reality. That would maybe be there's something we don't understand that we assume. You know, it's drawn me to a degree to things like what's his name? I think it's Donald Hoffman, who has this theory that physical reality as we experience it is really just an interface, and what the fundamental reality is just conscious beings, and we're all experiencing other conscious beings by means of this interface that we call physical reality, but it's not fundamentally real. And then if you look at experiments in quantum mechanics, they kind of seem to validate that, in that that information about physical objects isn't so much information about physical objects. It's like the objects themselves are made of the information. And that's like at the quantum level, that's the whole double slit experiments, and all that weirdness that goes on at the quantum level. So I'd say you could say that one lesson was that our science has missed something basic about the nature of physical reality. That's a conclusion I've drawn from the experience.
Yeah, I do as well. I do. Because that one of my questions was, do you believe there are more to uncover about these beings, and are you still investigating?
I don't know. I'd certainly welcome another experience like this, and but I haven't been back to that site in Maine since they, I mean, last time I was there was 2016, the following year. And the house now belongs to someone else, so I'm not going to go on their property and disrespect them.
No.
So there's not much more I can do other than, read up or talk to people who've had experiences with Bigfoot or other things like that, or if someone has an invisible, it'd be cool if someone has experienced exactly like this. So far, I haven't come across anyone. But I always, ever since I was young, I've read books on UFOs, on cryptozoology, on the paranormal, and all of that has fascinated me. But there's not a whole lot I can do as far as further investigation of this particular incident.
Yeah. I'm going to talk a bit about UFOs now. How did you first become interested in UFOs and extraterrestrial phenomena?
Well, you can go back to, I was born in 1970 and grew up in Rhode Island for the first 5 years or so of my life. Then we moved to Monterey for about almost 4 years. We lived in Monterey, California, in the naval housing area, because my dad was in the Navy. He was teaching at the postgraduate school there in Monterey. Then we moved to Hawaii for almost 4 years, kind of where there's the Pearl Harbor area, and I started in Rhode Island because there's a sub base near there, and my dad was in submarines. But then we moved after. Then my dad left the Navy, and we moved back to Monterey and lived there throughout my, last, I guess, my tween and teen years. And then my dad was up with Boeing. So after I got out of college in '93, I went up to Seattle, where I've been ever since, because Boeing's up here, and my dad was working for Boeing. But yeah, so the UFO thing, 1979, a documentary came out called UFOs Are Real. And it featured Ted Phillips, who's investigated UFO landing traces. It had extensive participation from Stanton Friedman, who, investigated Roswell and several other cases. Had an interview with Jesse Marcel Sr., the gentleman who had recovered debris at the Roswell site.
Oh, yeah.
It had the Betty and Barney Hill case, the Travis Walton case. So Bruce Maccabee, the optical physicist who examined UFO photos. A lot of people who unfortunately have passed away now were in that documentary. But that I used to watch that when it come on in the afternoons and so forth. And that's kind of how I got fascinated by the subject, was probably just watching that documentary from time to time when it would just come.
When you think about UFOs, what draws so many people to the mystery of UFOs?
I think people just want to know, are we alone in the universe? Are we destined to travel among the stars, like in our science fiction films? And if we have that destiny, wouldn't someone else already be doing that? And
yeah.
that
Definitely.
would certainly account for, okay, I see exotic technology in the sky doing things that we can't do. Well, that's probably, maybe it's the Millennium Falcon, or someone else's spacecraft are here, and that's, and then of course if you get into it in more detail, you find there's all this paranormal stuff, and different people interpret that in different ways. For me, I just say that relates to deeper aspects of physical reality that our science has yet to discover, but more advanced civilizations from other stars would probably already know about all that stuff. So they'd apply it in their technology, and they would have developed, the psychic abilities and so forth, because they understand reality at a deeper level than we do.
Yeah, because when you're looking at aliens, how do you personally define aliens? Are we talking about intelligent beings, microbes, or something else?
Well, I guess an extraterrestrial is any form of life that originated someplace other than Earth. And alien, I like the term alien because it's a little broader than even extraterrestrial, because it could include in that definition creatures from parallel Earths. Like the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that it's not just our timeline, but there are parallel timelines where maybe evolution took a different turn. And so one of the theories, for example, about reptilian aliens that people encounter, and of course people also encounter reptilian cryptids like the lizard man of Scape-Ore Swamp and so forth. One theory about that is that there's a parallel reality where instead of the dinosaurs going extinct 66 million years ago, they continued to evolve, and some of the smaller bipedal dinosaurs evolved into a humanoid form. And then if they learn to travel between the parallel realities, they could be coming here. And so they're strictly speaking, they wouldn't be extraterrestrial. They would be, but you could still call them aliens. They're from another version of Earth.
Yeah.
And alien could also include time travelers. So I like the term alien for that reason. Of course, some people prefer like extraterrestrial, because when you call someone an alien, it's kind of like you're creating a distance. You're calling them an outsider or something foreign that doesn't belong here. So when I use the term alien, I don't mean to like push them away like that. I'm just like looking for a broad term to define them.
Don't you think there's more sightings now and ever of UFOs?
I don't know. I would not say that. I would say what there is now is more discussion of it, less taboo around talking about the subject. That it's hard for me to track, but some people say the abduction phenomenon, as it was during like the 70s, 80s, 90s, with all the hybridization and the little grays kept showing people as all these babies and so forth, like we're creating hybrids, and some people say that is actually declined, like the hybridization program is reaching a culmination or an end. And honestly, I know I run a couple groups on Facebook that people still are reporting abduction experiences with the grays and others. So whether the phenomenon has ramped up or down, I can't really say that it has. I think it's just always there. And sometimes you get these flaps or UFO waves, whatever they call it, when there's a lot of sightings in a particular area.
Yeah.
Like maybe one group of being is involved in doing a lot of things in that area for that period of time, and then that group leaves, or they ramp down their activity. But I don't think UFO sightings have really gone up or down as far as I'm aware. But I'm not really all that plugged into it. It seems the more mainstream the phenomenon gets, the less interesting it becomes to me in some sort of strange way. It no longer has that forbidden fruit effect, perhaps, that attracts you to it.
I know what you mean. Do you believe the government or military organizations know more than they share with the public?
So the difficulty is that you know, let's say I am someone. I believe that there's been a cover up by groups in the Air Force like AFOSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, naval intelligence, other intelligence agencies have been involved in UFO crash retrievals and reabduction of abductees. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's gone on. But when you talk about, does the government know more? Well, like when you talk about the government, you have to define what is the government, and it's really, you have all these different agencies. You have private contractors, which is probably where some of the recovered craft are. Is probably with some of the companies that are trying to reverse engineer the technology. So I try to stay away from the conspiracy theories, but at the same time, if someone has an experience they want to relate to me, I'm going to look at what the people are reporting. And so it's not so much that the government knows more, it's that like specific compartmentalized groups within the government and within intelligence and military and private contractors know more than they're telling us.
Oh, I'm sure they do. What's the most convincing piece of evidence you have seen that suggests UFOs are real?
I don't think I can point to one. I've never seen a clear-cut landing trace. Ted Phillips he's one of my heroes, because for decades he actually went out to places where people were reporting a UFO had either landed or hovered right above the ground, and he was getting cases with broken branches, with marks in the ground from landing gear, where you can look at how the soil is compacted and determine the weight of the object from that. And he was determining some of these objects weighed multiple tons, just based on the compression of the soil. But I never saw that myself. I've seen marks on the bodies of abductees that they could not explain, that they attributed to their experiences. And those are interesting. But for me, the evidence isn't a single thing. It's just the testimony from multiple people reporting experiences and the commonalities between the experiences that different people report.
Right. Do you think disclosure or full transparency about UFOs will ever happen?
It's trying to happen. Disclosure is, there was a time when we thought that the president of the United States or the Secretary General of the United Nations would just come out and make a statement, and then we'd open up the hangar and say, okay, here's the bodies, here's the saucer, and our scientific community and the university professors and everyone now has access to them, and here's the proof. I don't know if we'll get there. I mean, I think we'll get to a time when everyone knows that it's real, but I don't think it's going to happen like that. But it is happening now, just through the hearings that Congress has had, and just through the level of discussion and the fact that the people are realizing, oh, for years we assumed this was just not real, and that people are finally waking up to the fact that, oh, we never had a good reason for believing it's not real.
David, what do you think their agenda is?
The beings, the aliens?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there was a project that the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, did from what was it, approximately 1992 to 1997, start of 97, I guess, is kind of when it ended, called the MUFON Abduction Transcription Project. That was run by Dan Wright, who organized it. He had multiple volunteers who were transcribing tapes of hypnosis sessions from abduction cases, and hypnosis sessions, as well as the interviews with the people for things they consciously recalled. There were about 20 different hypnotists or therapists who participated in that altogether. And from that, Dan Wright developed all these transcripts, and he came to a few conclusions. One of the conclusions was that we're not dealing with a single group of entities here for a single reason, but rather we're dealing with multiple groups that have overlapping but differing agendas. Like, some of them are trying to do some of the stuff that's the same, like this group may be doing hybridization or creating transgenic beings might be more technically accurate description. Another group may also be doing hybridization, but maybe working at cross purposes with the first group, and might also have some other agenda alongside that. So it's like multiple groups, multiple agendas. My feeling is that overall it is not a threat to humankind, to human sovereignty, or to the human future, because to whatever degree you have one little group that's actually threatening us or wants to control us or something like that, there's other groups that are there that kind of counter that. Plus, we got to say that we have a lot of say in this ourselves, even though our technology is not advanced, our knowledge is not advanced. Never underestimate what human beings are capable of, and that we do have a voice in our future.
When you think about the aliens, where do you think they live? Because 75% of the earth is water.
So could they be under the oceans? And certainly Richard Dolan has written quite a bit about USOs, unidentified submersible objects, or whatever the term is, which is like a UFO that is seen coming out of or going into the water. In many cases of that, and abductees have described seeing objects, bases of some kind, craft under the ocean during their encounters. Some of that certainly could be real. One of the first cases, in fact, the first abductee or experiencer I worked with, a woman named Garnett Doonan, had been taken to a base, I think, like in the Puget Sound or in that area under the ocean, and that was her understanding. I mean, she saw the ocean and she went in. So yeah, I mean, certainly there are beings present under the water. Reportedly, they're inside mountains, inside the earth.
What about? Because they're always thinking about the Antarctic. Is
possible.
A place
certainly
down there.
Yeah, that certainly could be there. And there's this, their technology, they can hide themselves very, like, perfectly almost. I mean, and then they understand the whole interdimensional thing as well. So the fact that we don't see them like walking around our streets or like don't see a big alien city in the desert or something, that doesn't mean they're not here. I've always said, well, that they can be here and we don't have to see them. We don't have to, know them, except for these occasional weird experiences where someone sees something coming out of the mountain or out of the ocean or whatever that is. The Earth, I do believe in mainstream science and the fact that, the structure of the Earth. I don't believe in a hollow Earth, but even in a solid Earth, you still have, obviously the inner part where it's liquid and lava and all that. You can't really do much down there, presumably. But the crust itself is thick, and there's caverns, and there's plenty of room to build bases in there. And with the technology they have, I'm sure they could create a base and we'd never even know about it.
Probably. If someone wanted to start learning about UFOs seriously, where should they begin?
You have to, and this it goes to something Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astronomer, says that one of the biggest dangers or problems is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right, but not enough to realize that you're wrong. So if you're going to get into UFOs, you probably have to read a lot of it and be careful about assuming that this one expert over here is the expert and everyone else is wrong. I mean, there's so much infighting in the UFO community. Yeah.
Why, David, why is that? Do people get jealous, or because you're getting on and they're not? And if you write a book,
people are jealous of the attention. There's just, people have their own feelings, their own ideas about what the phenomenon is about, and then they see, I'll come out and just a little bit, I'll bash Stephen Greer because, he says, well, if you don't agree with my view that it's all peaceful aliens, or, and he doesn't use the term aliens, he insists on extraterrestrial, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But he just accuses people of being part of a cover up, you're are part of the disclosure that's meant to, create a conflict between us and the aliens. So, I mean, I really don't like that when someone doesn't give other people the benefit of the doubt. At least they're being honest about their own views. I just have to assume, okay, people are telling us coming from their own perspective, because who am I to say that they're not? There's no one in this field that maybe almost no one that I agree with 100% of the views that they take. And I have disagreements with everyone. I have Stephen Greer, again, is someone I respect for what he's done for getting the ball rolling on disclosure. He did. He had the Disclosure Project. He interviewed all these people with inside knowledge of what happened when they were in the military and so forth. And he did great work as far as the CE5, the Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind, where human initiated contact, where people go out and try to communicate with the craft or call in the craft. All of that is great, and I appreciate that. But when he goes off on his thing, like, accusing people of being part of the cover up, that's where yeah. That's right.
Don't you think there's a lot of that goes on when you're talking about UFOs or anything like that? They say, "Oh, you're part of this group, and you don't want to be that, and I don't believe what you're doing." And
that's what I call conspiracist thinking. If you don't go along with exactly my position, then you're part of the conspiracy. And it's, once you start believing that, all you do is you go down into your own rabbit hole, and you can't dig yourself out of it because you're not listening to other points of view.
Exactly. What, we've got about 7 minutes left or something like that. I want to talk a bit about snakes.
Thank you for bringing that in. That's something. Yeah.
What sparked your interest in snakes then?
It's a subject I love. It's an animal I love. So when I was a kid, when I was living in Rhode Island, we moved away when I was about 5. And I remember playing in the snow there. I remember we had a big yard there. I mean, houses back then in the early 70s tended to have more of a big yard. Now they're all packed together. But I do think I remember that we saw a garter snake in the lawn one time. I just have a vague memory that maybe that happened. But even if that didn't happen, it's hard to tell when it's a memory from when you're like 3 or 4 years old. I kind of knew it was a cool thing. I knew that snakes were cool. And then we moved to Monterey, and in school, like in the school library, I started getting books out on snakes and salamanders. And, I wanted to learn all about reptiles and amphibians. And and we had there's a fire trail in the woods behind the houses, and you could walk back there, and we would go, like, after a rain, you could find what's called the Monterey ensatina, which is a salamander, which are these little orange salamanders. And one day when I was 7 years old, I was walking along that fire trail. And back then, of course, things were safer, at least parents weren't,
Yeah.
not like the helicopter parenting that they're all afraid of the boogeyman in the woods like they are now. So we could go play in the woods by ourselves, and on the side of the trail, I went off and looked under some pieces of bark, and under one piece of bark, there was a ringneck snake, a beautiful little kind of olive green snake with a bright orange belly and a little orange ring around its neck. And it was gentle. It was beautiful. I brought it home and I let it crawl in the garden, and then we put it in a cardboard box in the garage, because that's as much as close as to in the house as my parents would let me do. And of course, the next day it was gone, because snakes are excellent escape artists, and a cardboard box cannot contain them unless you perfectly seal all the corners and everything. But from then on, whenever I was living in California growing up, I would catch king snakes, racers, the California striped racer, which is really a form of whip snake, lots of gopher snakes, garter snakes, more ringnecks, all of that. And I just love them. They're so gentle. They're so nice to hold. You can let them crawl in your arms, and you get to know, you get to feel that interaction with them. Like, it's trying to go over here, I'll let it go over here. You do the hand over hand motion and just let it crawl. And when I was like 85, so I guess I was 14 at the time, I bought a boa constrictor, and I had that boa constrictor for 34 years. When I was away in college, my dad had to take care of it, but
Oh, God.
he finally passed away in 2019. But it was just a wonderful having that animal that you're taking care of, and the animal in some way is taking care of you. It's just like filling if a man is born with a snake-shaped hole in his heart, the boa constrictor filled that hole. So that's my relationship to snakes. And these, since my boa constrictor passed 6 years ago, I bought a whole bunch of books on snakes from all over the world, and I'm just learning all about the different kinds of snakes, and I love them.
One of the things about snakes is, what advice would you give someone who encounters a snake in the wild?
My advice is, if you know what species you're dealing with, or you at least know that it's a harmless species, just pick it up. Pick it up, respect it. A lot of snakes are what they call head shy. So if you touch like near their head or their neck, they might strike or get nervous. It depends on the species and the individual. Like gopher snakes vary. Some of them you can just pick them up and they're immediately calm and gentle, and they don't have a problem with it. Other ones will keep striking, and you have to hold them. You have to support their weight and hold them gently. Take some photos of them, hold them for about 15 minutes, and let them go right where you found them. Unless they were on a road, in which case you want to let them go just next to the road, because you don't want them to get run over. But don't pick up a snake if you don't know for sure that it's harmless, because there are, in certain parts of the world, there are lots of venomous species. In the U.S., all the venomous species are, at least the dangerously venomous ones, are pit vipers like rattlesnakes, copperheads, cottonmouths, and of course there's also the coral snakes. But anything else you encounter in the continental U.S. is perfectly harmless. So pick it up and enjoy it. Take some photos and let it go after 15 minutes or so.
Right. I'm just gonna have a look at. How do snakes differ from reptiles in terms of behavior and autonomy?
Well, a snake is a reptile, but the broader reptiles more broadly include lizards, alligators, crocodiles, turtles. So the snake, the main feature of the snake's anatomy is it has no legs. And so that changes, that obviously affects everything else about its lifestyle, how it lives. A lot of snakes like to live underground because they can go in those holes very easily when you don't have legs to get in the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the snakes, it is a reptile, and like the other modern reptiles, they're what we call cold-blooded or ectothermic, which means the body temperature depends on the ambient environmental temperature around them. And you'll find that if you're handling a snake, when the snake is warm, it's more active, it can move a lot more quickly, and on a cold day, like a racer is a very hard snake to catch on a lot of days, but on a cold day you can just pick it up. Or if you get it like early in the morning and it's under a piece of bark or a board or a piece of tin or something, and it hasn't warmed up yet, you just pick it right up.
All right. What we got left? Oh, about right. What about a flying snake?
The flying snake, that's in Asia, Southeast Asia, I think also the Philippines. I'm trying to remember. There's the paradise tree snake or paradise flying snake. That's a snake. It's a colubrid snake, like most of the harmless North American snakes. It is mildly venomous, but the venom is not really harmful to human beings. And the flying snake is capable of spreading its ribs, so it'll climb a tree, and when it gets high enough in the branches, if it wants to escape a predator or go someplace else, it can just jump off that branch, spread its ribs, and then it kind of glides down to another branch. So and they're very, very beautifully colored. Like the paradise flying snake is a great name for it.
What about the elephant trunk snake?
I'm not sure if I know what that one is. Elephant trunk snake. I mean, certainly there's snakes. There's various snakes that have like a lot of folds in their skin, and like certainly you can think of a python. Pythons can get about as thick as an elephant trunk. Some of those pythons are huge, but no, I don't know offhand what the elephant trunk snake is.
Which snake species are most at risk today, and why?
Habitat loss. I can say I'm not sure which specific species. I mean, it's species that are in small numbers or not tolerant of human presence, because certain like gopher snakes out in the western US and California king snakes, they tolerate disturbance. Like if humans disturb an area, they can live in the vacant lots and the fields and stuff that are there, or the trees that people leave standing. But there are other snakes that don't tolerate disturbance well. So if you put a bunch of roads in there and you totally change the habitat, there are many species that just can't survive. They can't breed in that situation and they'll die out. So though habitat loss is the greatest threat to snakes right now.
If you were going to advise somebody who wants to get a snake, what snake would you advise them to get?
Maybe a corn snake. Corn snake is a great starter snake. That's also it's the genus Pantherophis, the North American rat snakes. It's sometimes called the red rat snake because it's a member of that genus. A corn snake is a great one. A king snake is good. The thing to remember about king snakes, don't put two of them together because they'll eat each other.
Oh my God.
When I was a kid, that actually happened once, and it wasn't pretty. So yeah, but a corn snake is a great one. A king snake, if you just have one snake and keep it separate from any other snakes. A boa constrictor, if you're ready for something that maybe gets up to 8 or 9 feet long, is a little more advanced.
Oh, God.
Yeah, boa constrictor is great, but you just got to be ready for the commitment of feeding it. My boa constrictor lived 34 years, so if you get certain species, they'll last a long time, and you have to be ready to take care of them for the whole time.
Oh my God.
Corn snake is a great starter snake, though.
How big did you have your tank?
It was like 4 feet. It was made by a guy named Hoffman. Hoffman's reptile shop in Concord, California. So I think he's still in business, and I'd encourage anyone to visit him. But he constructed it's like, oh, I forget the material, like plyboard and acrylic for the front. But it was about 4 feet by 3 feet by 2 feet or something like that. So it was fairly large. And the snake, obviously, my snake grew to just over 8 feet, so she couldn't stretch out the whole way across. But it was big enough for her to be comfortable. And then I had a big water dish in the corner and a big piece of driftwood, and I had a lamp on one side to keep the lamp is located where the water dish is, so there's evaporation that creates humidity.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a temperature gradient across the enclosure, so the warm end where the lamp is, and the cooler end when she needs to cool off, and that's all good to maintain a good gradient, so the snake's not always stuck being too hot or too cold.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought so. Well, we just about run out of time. Thank you, David, for coming on the show. It's been very exciting with 3 different subjects there.
Yeah, you're welcome. I enjoyed this. Is the stuff I always love to talk about. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on these subjects.
Hey, no problem at all. I think it's something different. I like to talk about something different. And everybody, I know Mel's just put in chat room quite a while ago, he said, and what I like about Bob, he gets everybody different on his show. Don't stick about one subject. It's always something different. He gets all the best guests on his show. So thank you, Mel, for that. I think it was Melvin, I think it was, or one of the lads in chat room anyway. So, yes, so thank you again, David.
You're welcome.
You take care and have a lovely weekend.
Take care, Bob. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Yeah, same to you. Bye for now.